Welcome to another edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly. Coming up in today's episode.
Look at my favourite eucalyptus tree in the garden. We have an update on the palms that have spear pulled this winter. We look at lots of weeds and do lots of clearing. We look at the new bed that I've planted out this week. We have an update on the tree ferns, which ones are looking good. We look at the flowering bamboo. And we divide my Forestii ginger. I've just got to show you my favourite eucalyptus tree, one that's everybody stops and looks at in the garden. That's mainly because of this amazing white branches and trunk of this tree. We also have the trunk. If you look more carefully, you'll see that it's almost like camouflage, like army camouflage, with white, cream thorns, green, grey patches. And as we go up the tree, it comes to a pure white, almost a bluish white, as we go further up and down the smaller branches. The leaves themselves, none of these leaves have been hit by winter. There's no dead, brown, tattered leaves at all. It's pretty much pristine after winter, which is incredible when you look at some of the other eucalyptus trees in the garden and area. And why I'm showing you this tree this week is because it's flowering, it's blossoming. Really unusual flowers, like sea anemones really. All these little anthers out from the central part of the flower. Lots of pollen on these. And these are covering all the lower mature stems, and as we go up the tree it's just the foliage that's growing rather than any flowers, but there's still lots of pure white flowers all around here. You'll find the white flowered eucalyptus on the whole are much hardier than the pink and red flowering trees. So yeah, this one is flowering now. It makes a great statement in the garden. It is pretty tall, as you can see, but it's not going to get absolutely huge like some of the other eucalyptus trees in the garden. Probably my favourite tree. Now here's my Washingtonia robusta palm that you may recall about 9 weeks ago. All the leaves were completely dead and I cut this right at the top, cut all the leaves off completely, and I'm happy to report it's not dead. We've got 2 new spears coming out, very pale at the moment. Hopefully they'll green up soon. It's a quick growing palm Washingtonia, so it should by the end of summer look back to normal. Obviously if it did this every winter it's not great, because it means for most of the year there's no leaves on the palm. It was a bad winter last year, so hopefully next winter it won't lose all its leaves like it did this time. But it's great to see that it's still alive, and we'll have a look at some of the other palms and how they're recovering around the garden. Here's one of the Princeps hybrid palms, which I put sulphur on as it spear pulled 9 weeks ago. And as you can see, we have a new spear, a new leaf forming and pushing up, so this will recover, and thankfully the older leaves on this one are fine, so it will do well. As soon as the new leaves come out it will look like it's not been damaged at all by winter. Now this is a Brea amata, which for the first time had real damage after last winter, but I'm happy to report
we have the new leaves pushing out. You can see that all the damage on the top of this leaf and the mould and fungi on the top of this leaf, but this is growing out, this one's growing out, and we've got a normal looking spear in the middle. So hopefully in a few weeks time that will look as good as new. Here we have my small Chimerops arborescens. This is a single trunk forming form of Chimerops humilis. All the old leaves were fine, but a couple of new leaves browned off and the centre completely spear pulled. But if I just zoom in there, you can see that we have new leaves forming. So it's not dead at all, and in a few weeks again that will look fine. So that's recovered. Now finally we come to the worst affected palm from last winter, and that's a Briar edulis, which should be hardy as a Washingtonia or hardier, but all the leaves completely died before Christmas, and then the long winter really damaged this palm. I had to cut it back several inches. It was actually trunking up to about here, and I had to cut it down that far. It's all oozing. It looked like there was no life in this whatsoever, and it still looks obviously not good at all. But if I just look down here, there's a tiny bit of green there, and that has actually pushed up about a centimetre or so in the last 9 weeks. So it's not much. It looks rubbish and still a bit of rot in there, but I don't think now that it's actually completely dead. So we'll monitor this. I will plant around this palm to cover it over. If it recovers, great. If it doesn't, I'll dig it up next spring and plant something hardier there. But overall, looking at the garden and looking at all the palms, it looks like they've all survived winter, even the tender ones, which is great to see. Now it was great going to Madeira last week, but I've come back to a heck of a lot of weeds in the garden. Now just look at this bed here. Some nice plants at the back, but look at all the weeds. This is 2.5 weeks worth of growth. And you can see all of the colocasias in there, which we're going to keep, and bananas and maybe the odd canna. But we've got absolutely millions of weeds, nettles and all sorts of other things that we don't want to keep, dandelions and thistles, etc. So I'm going to weed this bed, and we're going to be left hopefully with lots of nice little plants, some that we'll have got for a winter and some that have self-seeded, like the amaranthus. So I'm going to get cracking with that now. So I've cleared most of the weeds away from this area now, but the next thing I've got to tackle is this euphorbia that's really outgrown its space. Magnificent plant, but it's coming far too close to the edge here. So I'm going to use my secateurs and cut all this away, see what plants are underneath. And this will allow for more light and air to get to the plants and allow some more planting as well in this area. And then I'll cut back a bit of this Persicaria red dragon, maybe transplant it around the garden, and this will really open up this space as well. As you can see, I've kept loads of these amaranthus seedlings that have self-sown, got rid of the weeds in between. I'm going to thin these out a lot more as well, just allowing a few plants to stay, and they will develop over the coming weeks. Cover this bed along with the colocasias, which are making lots of sizable leaves now. We'll make it a really nice tropical red and green bed. And now I've cut back the euphorbia there. You can see down here we have ginger plants and more colocasias that are trying to grow. This gives them a lot more space. And there's a big gap now where all that euphorbia was covering. Still looks a good plant at the top there. And one thing about euphorbias is the sap is quite corrosive. Well, an irritant should I say. And nice little milky sap. If you get that in the skin and you get sunlight on it, it can blister and burn the skin for quite a long time. So I'll let those stems dry off And then I'll be very careful with the prunings to put them straight into the bin and not get on my skin. And now I've finished the bed, weeded everything. You can see the colocasias all around the front. Planted a banana there, Eucalyptus behind, and then the Eucalyptus palm behind that. I've had to cut back the red dragon persicaria from the middle because it just flopped over as soon as I started chopping back around the weeds. It was really dry, so I've soaked this for about half an hour now just to wet this bed. And then I've also, around here, got the lobelia tuber. That's grown really well. Past that, I've weeded the rest of the bed, planted out a few seedlings, and a dahlia and a ricinus there. And I am, because I went on holiday, at least 2 weeks behind planting out all my summer bedding. But it will catch up, and in a couple of weeks' time it'll be all fill in this area, as well as the rest of the beds around the garden. So I'll do an update in a few weeks' time. Now you may remember I cut back this bamboo in winter because I noticed it was flowering. I cut back all the flowering stems, but there's a couple I obviously missed because unfortunately it continues to flower, and you can see the flowers here. It's a member of the grass family, so the grass-like flowers, and there's several of them. There's a few more down here which are just flowering from little cut down culms and stems. But the good news is it's shooting healthy thick culms as well, so these are new here, and this is the biggest it's produced. This is about 2.5 centimetres across, about 1 inch at the base. So that one is growing quite vigorously, so I think if I cut down the rest of the flowers it should hopefully stop flowering and recover. If it continues flowering this summer, then it might be over for this particular species of bamboo, which is Phylostachys bambozoides castellonis. So I've tidied a lot of the weeds away from this particular bed, and as you can see we have begonias, and this is begonia bonfire, I believe. You probably wouldn't think it's hardy at all, especially after the winter we've had, but this one's come through no problem with just a bit of straw over the top. And it's not just this one. If I look around the garden, there's plenty of other begonias that have survived the winter. Here we have the new bed between the jungle hut and the house, and I've planted out tons of things that we grew from seed earlier this spring. So we've got the Tithonias, we've got the Cleome, we've got the zinnias, and we've also got the bananas that we propagated. So they're all out here. They don't look good at the moment, very weedy, small little plants. But in a few weeks' time they'll have bulked up and cover the ground. So the main focus now is actually keeping this place watered really well. It's not rained really for over a month, apart from a couple of rainstorms. And then this should hopefully look really spectacular come July. Hard to believe now because they're so small, these plants, but they do quickly bulk up once we've got some rain and heat in there. Now here's an update on my Amesia zygormis, and this pea related plant is growing nice from the ground. It's like a herbaceous shrub really, it'll grow up to 2 meters tall. But if we take a closer look, some of the leaves are now variegated, and this is probably due to some pathogen, some virus that's got in there and caused a mottling of the leaves. So it's something I have to watch. It could be related to the kind of virus, because there is a pea mosaic virus that canners get, and obviously this being related to the pea family, well, it is part of the pea family, could also be affected by. So I'll cut out a few of these leaves and hopefully it won't spread to the rest of the plant, which is looking healthy. Now it's time to look at the tree ferns in the garden, which a lot of people have been struggling with this spring after the cold winter we had, and I've had mixed results this spring as well. This Dicksonia antarctica tree fern has actually remained green over winter. The leaves you see there are all from last year. They remained green, believe it or not, and the issue is it's not flushed so far. So the new leaves haven't formed this year. By this time last year we had a full new crop of leaves unfurling, which are actually the ones you can see now from last year. But as we zoom into the middle, you can only just see one of the new leaves unfurling there to the middle right hand side. And this is because a lot of the new leaves have been frost damaged before they've been able to emerge, and they've died in the centre. So what I've had to do is go in and basically with my fingers just rip out all the black croziers, the unfurled leaves, and rip them out to give it room for the new developing croziers underneath to rise up and start to unfurl. So that's one of them there. So even though the older leaves have remained green, the tender new leaves in the centre have been killed by the winter. If we just look down here, this is the worst affected one in the garden. This one is a grown that's almost tree fern that's doubled in height in 5 years. You can see that's where it was planted at that height. That's the height of the original tree fern, and then it's grown all this in 5 years. But all the leaves went brown, which was expected, and then all the knuckles inside the croziers were completely killed and blackened off. So I have ripped them out, pulled them out with my fingers, and I'll show you in detail that now. So this is where they were. I've pulled them all out round the edge here. You can see the black knuckles, you can see they were black, so just basically do this, pull them out, and now you can see in the centre some lighter brownier fluff, and these are new knuckles. If you look at this one here, you see that? That's green, and these are green just here, so it's way behind where it was last year, but it has survived. Probably won't look as good this year at all, definitely a lot later, but hopefully if we have a mild winter it'll be back to its best next year, because this was doing leaves about almost a metre long, and this is only about 40 centimetres tall, so it looked great because it was coming right out and covering this area here. And let's look at a third one that was established. You can see one really nice healthy unfurled leaf on this one, but the rest again are down here. We had a few black knuckles that I had to pull out a couple of weeks ago, and then these green ones are unfurling now. So it's well behind where it was this time last year, but they are alive, so persevere with them. What you're looking for in a tree fern which is not shooting or unfurling its leaves, is in the centre. Look for the black knuckles, rip them out. If there's no sign of life under that, then still wait till the end of summer, because they might still come much later, especially if they're only planted last year. If you get orange, smelly, liquid ooze coming out the centre, then I'm afraid it means the tree fern is completely dead and it will not come back. So if you have the orange oozy goo of death, then it's curtains for that particular tree fern. So these three mixed fortunes, basically they're just being delayed by the really cold winter and the death of the newest emerging croziers over winter, but they will recover. They are quite hardy. We only got to -5 here, but there's so many different snowfalls and cold days that it's just really set them back a lot. Now it's time to have a look at the tree ferns at the back of the garden that I only planted late last year, September time. Now here we are in my mini tree fern forest at the back of the garden. It only developed late last year. I'm very surprised, happily surprised, to see that they're doing really well on the whole. I expected these to be really struggling because they only had their first leaves back in sort of September, October, just as autumn was getting into full swing and winter was on the way. So they've not had long to photosynthesize and get a lot of energy to grow again this year, and they were not watered particularly well last year either. So this one here is looking in really good shape. It's got leaves as big as I expected for a newly planted tree fern. So that didn't get protected particularly well, and it's done really well. Move on to this one. This is what I expect really of a newly unfurled tree fern that's only been planted recently, which is basically not many leaves and not too big. But that means that one's okay. And this is a twin, and the one next to it is yet to unfurl. So it does show how random it is, because there's lots of new leaves going to come out. They're definitely alive, I can feel them, and they're definitely green under there. Well, that's a twin. You can see the stake there to help it establish. One's already unfurled. The one next to it, which is probably almost identical genetically, is not unfurled at all yet, in exactly the same environmental conditions. Just swing over to here. This is my Cyathea that protected with the tyres. That has pushed out about 6-7 leaves already, and is looking great. Not damaged by winter. In some respects you could say that tree fern is proved hardier than the Dicksonia antarctica. And then we come over to my bigger twins here, and if we move up you can see one has unfurled. Quite stunted leaves actually, but that's what I expect from one that's only been planted recently. But the other twin, side of the twin, has not shown any sign of life at all. It's still got the really long base of the previous leaves when it was cut back in Australia. And inside, I've not been able to see if there's any new croziers emerging. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that one will be okay. And then if we just move over here, again, another one, it's fine. Small leaves, I need to water this a lot more. Open up the crown a bit because it's quite narrow in here. But that one should be fine. And then finally this one, no life at all yet. But I'm not worried, as I said, they're all different, they all emerge at different times. And I've just got to wait, water these really well. Something I need to do better here, because I do watering every other day here, but really need to be watered at least once a day to be established. Once you're established, you can let them sort themselves out to some extent, because they will uptake water from the ground, but they like to have the trunks nice and moist, so ideally water them once or twice a day. So I'll wait till the end of summer, and hopefully later on we'll see that all the tree ferns have leaves on them. So that's tree ferns. If yours are looking like this, don't panic. Like I said, they all emerge at different times. Normally it's May, but when they've only been planted less than a year or so, then it can be any time in the growing season between April and October. Now here's my huge ginger clump that's shooting a bit later than normal, but it's always pretty late, and it's covering quite a big area now. This is Hedychium forrestii, the hardy, tall growing, white flowering ginger. It's actually growing into that tree fern there, into Trachycarpus behind, and right into where the lawn was at the edge here. It's covered in straw in winter for a bit of added protection. It's time to divide this. If I just stand up, you can see it's a pretty big clump, so I'm going to divide this using my spade. Probably get 5 or 6 plants here. Just cut that through the rhizome, and as you can see, the rhizome grows on the surface. It likes to be on the surface, so when I plant it, I'll keep the rhizome just slightly proud of the soil level. It's time to get dividing that now. And now I've cut round and divided the forrestii ginger, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 big sections, really big clumps, about good 15-20 litres each. And I'll plant one back here, and the other 6 will go dotted around the garden. and they'll be given a huge soak. And if you take a closer look, you can see every single one of them. It's got loads of growth points. So they should all make good plants this year, even though gingers don't like being disturbed really. I think they should hopefully flower, fingers crossed, by September, October time. Right, let's get these divided. So there's one of the sections of the ginger replanted in its original planting hole with lots of extra compost. Hopefully that will cover the same space again within a couple of years. Got a couple of little sections in pots here. I've got another section of the ginger planted here. And another one here. And another one here. And finally another section over here. So that's 7 or 8 sections around the garden, and a couple potted up as well. Well, after a cold misty start, it's come out gloriously sunny this afternoon at 22 degrees, and I'm really happy with what I've got done in the garden today. Cleared lots of weeds, planted out lots of plants, and divided my big ginger along with all sorts of other tidying up jobs. So thanks for watching. Next week I will be making eucalyptus safe, and I'll be pruning palms, so join me then.